So is a tomato a fruit?
So a couple of days ago, I got into an argument online. This YouTuber was doing a challenge attempting to beat Plants vs. Zombies 2 using only fruits, and the point of contention was about the definition of a fruit. My argument was that if you were to stick to the strictest botanical definition, the challenge would be too easy, so we should instead pick another definition. My opponent's argument was that there is no other definition. When I tried to push back by saying just because botanists have their own specific definition doesn't make it wrong when us commoners give it a separate definition that's more useful to us, he pushed back with, yes it does, that's the whole point of defining things, crying emoji.
Now, I shouldn't have to tell you that that isn't the point of defining things.
In semantics, the study of how meaning is mapped onto words, definition follows usage. This is called descriptivism, when the word cringe, which means to recoil in fear or discomfort, gained the meaning of the position that such an action leaves you in. The takeaway was cringe can be used as a noun now, not wow, it's crazy how so many people are using this word wrong at the same time. And now that it's being used to mean content that would elicit such a reaction and possessing the capability of eliciting such a reaction, you accept that the word is gaining new meanings, not that people are misunderstanding the one true definition of the word. By contrast, scientists go the other way, with usage following definition. They come up with a definition they need to describe, and then they grab the nearest word to refer to it. And then they take all of the words that would fit that description and put it in a box. This, of course, has led to millions of gotchas as people continue to be surprised that scientific definitions fail to match up with linguistic definitions.
But why should they? I cannot stress this enough.
The fact that there happens to be a significant overlap between the two definitions is superfluous, but some might disagree. They might say that these definitions refer to precise metrics, and if we have objective definitions, we should use them, that we should let the regular definition assume the shape of the scientific definition.
But just to show you how stupid that would be, let's talk about those definitions.
So, the way the word fruit is used, it tends to contrast with vegetable. Fruits are any sort of sweet or sour produce, while vegetables are savory or bitter. Sure, you might argue that those are arbitrary definitions, but so are the words sweet and savory, and we don't need a scientist to tell us the correct meaning of them.
But what do the scientists say?
So, let's say you're a plant, and your eggs have finally been fertilized by pollen, hopefully not your own, so you better not mess it up. You take the fertilized embryo and you pack it with enough nutrients to get it to the seedling stage, the endosperm. And then you pack it with some pre-made leaves to give it a head start on photosynthesis when it does reach the seedling stage, the cotyledons. 1 if it's a monocot, and 2 if it's a dicot. Then you surround all of that with a hard shell, and just to make sure that no animal tries to break it open, you add in a little surprise.
It's poison.
This is the seed. Now you can use these animals to your advantage. If it swallows the seed whole and then excretes it, not only does it travel to greener pastures, but it gets a free fertilizer. They encourage this sort of behavior by surrounding it with nutrients. This is the fruit. Now, that's not entirely true. The nutritious area doesn't need to surround the seed. In a strawberry, it's only attached to it. Now, a strawberry is a weird example for a couple of reasons, but it should be good enough for now. So, let's answer the title question by first answering a series of smaller questions. A lot of people have the misconception that if it has seeds inside it, it's a fruit. So, first off, this is a juniper berry. It's edible, and it has a pungent, citrusy flavor. It surrounds the fertilized seeds of a juniper bush. Is a juniper berry a fruit? Well, it's not, because the definition is more complicated than that. Fruits are derived from the flowers of their plants, but juniper bushes don't have flowers, they have cones. They're gymnosperms. Now, gymnosperms don't have an ovary surrounding their seeds, hence the name. The juniper berry is technically a really weird pine cone. Okay, so a fruit must be derived from the ovary of its flower. Now, there's a distinction between true fruits and accessory fruits. True fruits are composed entirely of the ovary, while accessory fruits contain extra parts of the flower and stem. Apples are technically not true fruits. Most of their flesh is derived from parts of the hypanthium. Now, an accessory fruit is still a type of fruit, but it has to at least include the defunct ovary. That's one reason why strawberries are so weird, because the flesh of a strawberry is derived almost entirely from the receptacle. The other reason why it's weird is because of the simple aggregate multiple distinction. Notice how I drew it like this? That's only for simple fruits. An aggregate fruit, like a strawberry, has multiple ovaries, and a multiple fruit, like a raspberry, is multiple flowers working together. So, now here's our next question. Is a strawberry a fruit? Well, a fruit is the portion derived from the ovary enclosing a seed, and each of the ovaries do enclose their seeds individually, and they've hardened into an achene, something resembling a sunflower seed. So, what's the actual flesh? Well, it's just the receptacle. It may be totally analogous to the fruit of another plant, but it's not homologous. The strawberry seeds are fruits. The actual strawberry is a vegetable. The same is true about raspberries. They're just about 100 fruits glued together. Now, an additional dichotomy is between dry fruits and fleshy fruits. The dry fruits have their ovaries dried and hardened, and the fleshy fruits have them wet and soft. People think scientific definitions have to be objective just because scientists use them, but they're not. They aren't better, just different. Over to the dry fruits, we have the dehiscent, which split open when ripe, and the indehiscent, which don't. The beans are on top, or at least the legumes are. Beans can technically refer to any fruit that comes from a plant in the Fabaceae family. However, all of these are legumes, but the nuts are on the bottom. Now, our next question is going to be a weird one. Is a strawberry a nut? Well, a nut is a kind of fruit, so the strawberry itself isn't a nut. But the individual seeds, those are dry. They don't split open, and the third characteristic being that the seed wall and fruit aren't fused.
Oh my gosh, are strawberries nuts?
Well, technically no. The outer wall is too thin. Nuts have a relatively thick outer layer, and the strawberry's thinner layer makes it an akene. Other would-be nuts like the wing nut are snubbed by the threshold too.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Relatively?
And yes, we're learning the same lesson as the carcinization video. Scientific definitions aren't as objective as we all hope. Now, if you made it this far, the catch-all for all fleshy fruits is called berries, famous for including squash, citrus, tomatoes, and almost nothing with the word berry in its name. Beside them are the drupes, or stone fruit. In addition to the outer coating of a seed, the drupes have hardened a portion of the ovary to form the pit. However, the rest of the ovary is still fleshy. If the entire ovary is hardened, it's called a dry drupe. So what's the difference between a nut and a dry drupe? And that brings us to our fourth question. Is a coconut a nut? Well, not really. Nobody wants to call a coconut a nut because there's still a distinction between the inner layer forming the pit and the outer layer forming the husk. But how is that definition the clincher for telling them apart? The difference between a nut and a drupe is supposed to be that a drupe is fleshy. So the reason a coconut isn't a nut is because of its fleshy outer layer? No. All most people can say is that it's not a nut because it's a drupe.
Or the even more asinine, because it's a fruit. Like all nuts aren't fruits.
Point is, I see no reason why drupes and nuts should be mutually exclusive. But here's the almond. It's also in the drupes, but unlike the fibrous husk of a coconut, the almond actually does have flesh.
So it's a fruit, is it? Is an almond a fruit?
And the answer is an easy no. This is not a fruit. This is a seed. The fruit is the part formed by the ovary, and you strip that away to get at the almond. The nutritional value is just you poaching the embryo's nutrients, similar to how eggs work. The same is true about beans and peas, and she is actually kind of the opposite of a drupe, where instead of the inner layer of the ovary hardening to form something like a seed, the outer layer of the seed softens to form something like a fruit. So, to recap, the musical fruit is actually a seed, sunflower seeds are actually fruits, squash is a berry, the fruit of a mangosteen is its rind, and strawberries are a bunch of nuts glued onto a vegetable. And if you think there's anything slightly wrong with that, then my debate partner thinks that you're objectively wrong. So, let's go back to the old adage.
Intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad.
Why is that? Well, because the phrase fruit salad has a conjugate meaning separate from its two words, sure. But what if somebody asked you to bring fruit to a potluck? Would you bring squash, bean shells, and olives? No, because you understand the subtext. You understand what someone wants when they ask for fruit, and what they want is sweet and sour produce. You understand that the word fruit has a definition us commoners use besides the one that scientists have given it. The purpose of language is to transfer information and ideas. So if you understand that meaning, and they expect you to understand that meaning, then that definition can't possibly be wrong.
Intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that it isn't.